Can we ask you too, Leigh, the journey then from that particular point of starting to play through to the Matildas? Because I think more so, it was very structured, wasn't it? You played for your club, you played representative level, you played state. There was more structure to it, right? So how did it go through for you to get from that point to debut for the Matildas?
So for a long time it was like that. So you played for your club. You know, if we work back the other way, to play in the national team, you had to play for your state team at the nationals. If you didn't play, that was it. You weren't up for selection. To play in the state team, which played in the nationals, you had to play in your rep team. So for me, that was Ku-ring-gai. To play in the rep team, you had to play in your club team. And I played in quite a few clubs in Ku-ring-gai. So you would have club training, rep training, state training. So you'd have at least 3 training sessions. Then you'd have your club competition. Then you'd have the rep competition. And then once a year in the August school holidays, you'd have the nationals. So there was plenty of football. But, yeah, you had to go through those steps. So I was in the first nationals, so that was 74. Yep. And every game I was ready. The bag was packed. The boots were on before I even got to the field. The boots were on. The gear was on. The state tracksuit was on. I'd get there and I was on the bench first game. And I thought, that's all right. Got a few more games to go. And it was every day for a week. Went the whole way through the tournament. The closest thing I got to getting on the field was to go on and help an injured player off. And 20 minutes to go in the last game, we're up 6-0 against Victoria. I still didn't get on. That was when I got on to help an injured player off. But I'm saying to my dad, what's the story? And he goes, Leigh, you just have to wait your time. Just do your apprenticeship. You'll be fine. Just keep going. And like then I just played in. I didn't actually play in the nationals the next year because our association didn't affiliate. But then 75, 76, 77, then 78. The nationals, they'd always announce a national squad, but it never went anywhere or did anything. But 78 was the first year I was in it. And I can remember ringing my mum saying, hey, Mum, guess what? I got in the national squad. She's gone, oh, Leigh. And I'm like, oh, okay, bye. Hung up.
Have a nice day.
It's like, oh, okay. You know, like that was kind of it. And then not long after we had the nationals, we got a letter to say that we'd been invited to play in this tournament in Taiwan. And it was like, and that was the beginning of it. But it was pretty random from then on. There were outside of Australia, things were happening, but there weren't any confederations realistically. So no World Cups. They were invitational tournaments. Towards the end of me playing in the national team, we started, there was Oceania was formed, so the confederations were starting. So we played in Oceania tournaments. And the last tournament I was in was 88, which was the first FIFA tournament. So it was kind of working out whether a Women's World Cup was a viable option for them.
Reasonable, yeah. Fantastic. And Renaye, I know we've spoken a lot about it because I want to hear that journey that got you through to getting the letter or the phone call about playing in the Matildas. But we've pulled this series from sowing seeds to sewing on badges because there's a fantastic story that I love you to tell. So not about your as well as your journey, but what's the sewing on badges all about?
Yeah, well, it was the national team was selected, and we'd all get to meet at the airport. We very seldom did we train before we travel. We just we trained by correspondence mostly. We did the odd training camp for a couple of days before we'd fly out. But an early memory for me was, we had to pay to play. We'd get invoices. We'd get training by correspondence a lot. Coach would ring up, how you going? We'd fly out to go overseas to play some of the best teams around at the time. So we'd all gather at Sydney International Airport. We'd probably pay our final balance of what we owe for our trip. pay for our gear, go and try it on in the bathroom at the airport in Sydney, and then come back out with our gear, final payment. And it was one of the trips, I can't quite remember exactly which one it was, but we were handed our coat of arms to stitch on our jacket or our top to travel overseas. So, sewing wasn't my strong point. I gave it a good crack. But anyway, so that's just one of many, many stories, Marty, of, what we had to do back then to represent it, to be a Matilda. Well, we weren't known as Matildas back then, but look, there's so many wonderful memories. But to be fair, I'd go back and do it all again. I keep saying it. If somebody had said to me, where do you see women's football in, say, 40 years' time? My answer would have been, I really hope women don't have to pay to play the game of this wonderful game of ours. Never did I ever imagine back then how far we are and where we've come. So there's so many stories, Lamington drives, mile of coins to raise money, family support. I was very fortunate. Again, I had the Central Coast football community behind me, fundraising and supporting me. My parents were my biggest fans, and for them, I miss them every day. They were wonderful. They had my back. They were always there for me. And the Budgewoi football community were wonderful, helping raise money to go. So yeah, there's lots of stories. I was very fortunate. I had mentioned on the Trailblazer film that's going to be out and about that some women, wanted to travel and were given the option, if you go away and play for your country, there may not be a job for you to come home to. And I know some players that did choose to play football over their job. They just moved on. They left that job and worried about it when they got home. But luckily, and I'm very grateful, I wasn't one of those players. I had so much support, so I was really grateful for that. But, how long do we have? There's so many different stories. There's so much banter with this lot we could go on about. But, sewing on badges, sowing the seeds, sewing on badges. Great memories, fun ones to look back on.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll be having further episodes where we can cover off on a number of those stories, because I, for one, would listen to them all night because I love every bit of it. Vicki, what was your memory of actually being called into as Renaye said, it wasn't actually the Matildas then, but how did you find out that you were playing for the country? And your first game was in Noumea, wasn't it?
Yeah, so state titles or national titles in Perth. And then we went to the presentation. We'd won the state titles then. So we went to presentation, and towards the end, they started reading out all these names. And I said to someone, I can't remember whether it was Leigh or someone else, but I sort of said, what's this all about? And they go, oh, they just select this national team, and I'm just sort of going, oh, yeah, all right, and just sort of got up and, they sort of do the big clap and whatnot, and you don't really know what it's all about then. But then you sort of get I know it sounds funny, but you get it, we got a letter in the mail to sort of say that we've been selected, and then they sort of said, oh, we're going off to Noumea, New Caledonia, and in the I think it was the first Oceania tournament, wasn't it, Leigh?
Yeah.
And it was a great experience, but the same thing, we had to fundraise for it, and I think we had I organised a dinner at a place where we charged everyone $5 extra on their dinner, and which was sort of quite an easy way of doing it.
Yeah.
And you get 120 people, plus there, and people sort of come out of the woodwork, Lamington drives and peanut brittle and a whole lot of other sort of stuff that we did. It was, individual stuff that everyone did, and we all sort of got on the bandwagon, with the New South Wales girls or the Northern New South Wales girls. So it was, and you got a lot of help from your local club, and it was great, and you just wouldn't, you wouldn't swap it. As Renaye said, I can remember, sort of looking at it and going, gosh, I've got to save all this money to try and pay But I was one of the lucky ones. I had a Dutch fellow that was my boss, and he was a mad football supporter, and he had no hesitation in letting us have time off. So, and he really raved over it and wanted to know all about it and whatnot. So yeah, I was lucky.
Absolutely. Always the Dutch are very mad about their football.
Very passionate, yeah.
And how good is peanut brittle too? You'd make a fortune off me that you had to pay for it this time too. Janine, what was the story of you finding out? And I think it was yourself who said too, with the gear that you were getting, it's pretty much made for the men's. It wasn't, styled in any way. It was just passing around the gear to see what fitted rather than what number you got, right?
Yeah, it's definitely hand-me-downs back then. And when you're 5'2" and probably 40 kilos, you always felt like you shopped at Tent City.
You've never been 40 kilos.
Back as a 14-year-old, Leigh, I certainly have been.
It only took her 35 minutes. She's done well.
I could have said a lot in between then and now.
So yeah, I guess Rafa touched on it there. I remember the Nationals getting selected into my first Australian team, and I was pretty excited, and my family was pretty excited, and everyone's pretty excited for me. And I was working at just a lighting shop actually in Camberwell, and I put in for time off, and they said no, you can't have time off. I wanted 2 weeks of leave. I think we were going to the AIS before we went on the trip to Taiwan.
Yep.
And they declined my leave. So it sort of gave me no option. There's certainly no way I was going to stay working in a lighting shop as opposed to representing my country in the game I love. So I went home to Mum and said, Mum, I've quit work. They wouldn't give me the time off. And I think she wanted to go down and certainly give them a mouthful. And the next thing, the Herald Sun knocked on my door and they want to do a story on it because you're representing your country and you're losing your job over, something that should be so important in your life, your first cap. So yeah, for me, that was a bit of a downer, to know that when I got back from this trip that I was unemployed. So yeah, that was a bit disappointing at the time. But yeah, you certainly wouldn't look back and you certainly wouldn't hesitate, but to hand in that resignation straight away. But yeah, it was my first tournament. I was pretty excited and, I couldn't wait to get on that plane. I think at the AIS though, the food was amazing. I think we ate 14 courses every night we went and ate.
Wow.
I think I put on 6
kilos then, right?
I think I put on 6 kilos before I even hopped on the plane because the food was that good at the AIS. But yeah, no, that was my first memory of my first cap.
Absolutely. And Trae, your memories of being picked for the Matildas, that how'd you find out about the call-up? Was your situation any different than the others when it came to having to get on the plane or wherever you had to be doing your travelling? Because I think it was Lismore, I think you played the first game at.
Yeah, as I was coming up through the ranks in the 16s and youth and the open system, like I was playing for Northern New South Wales in the national titles. But then there was that transition of when all the ITCs got up and running. So obviously I was part of the Newcastle chapter of the ITC. And we started playing in this competition called the Ansett Summer Series, which basically I think is what the W League kind of followed on from. So yeah, I had not long finished school in year 12 in Port Macquarie, moved to Newcastle full time because I was travelling back and forth up and down the highway every weekend to play in this competition. And I started working for the Northern New South Wales Soccer Federation, it was called back then, as their first female sports development officer. And I just got the call up to say that I'd been selected in the national team. I don't really remember whether I was excited or not. I guess I would have been probably excited, nervous, but to be able to play in a Tri-Nations series in a regional town in Northern New South Wales as my first international was pretty special because it meant that my family could come and watch and Dad got the bus and drove everybody up there. But
Love it.
I came on as a reserve, so I come off the bench. But all I remember is, I just wanted my first touch to be a really good touch, and anything that happened after that, it didn't matter. I just wanted to get into the match, and I do remember that I received the ball and I played a cracking ball through to Lisa Casagrande, I think it was, and she almost scored off it. So I'm like, righto, well, that's it. I'm done. I don't care what happens from here.
Sub me back off. I'm done.
Yeah, but it was a pretty, it was. Yeah, I mean, all the girls would say the same. It's a bit of a surreal thing to play for your country. And I can only imagine what it's like to come out in front of a home country in a World Cup, like the girls did last year. It would just, I can't even imagine what that would feel like. I mean, we were only playing in front of maybe a couple of hundred people.
Yeah.
A couple of thousand if we were lucky. So blows my mind.
Bit amazing. And it's almost like that's a perfect segue that we worked on, because now I want to jump to the Matildas and particularly the World Cup. Trae, I'll stay with you. It's a twofold question. One, the Matildas have become probably one of our most loved national teams now. The World Cup was just amazing. Do you think we've made the most of that? Do we make the most of the love we have for our current Matildas? And do you think we made the most of the World Cup coming to this country?
Oh, that's a good question, isn't it?
It's about time I came up with a good one.
There's a lot to be done. Let's just say, look, I'll say this: the match against France, as the match before the World Cup started, we were all there, weren't we, girls? And there's a photo of the goat, Renaye and I, the goat and the rooster. The game had finished and the stadium was empty, and someone stood behind us and we had our arms around each other, and it's just a picture of us from behind looking out at this beautiful, amazing stadium with the roof covered over. And we were just having a moment, weren't we, Renaye? It was like, we've been watching the Matildas. We've been going to watch the Matildas for years now, and it's been watching the momentum grow and grow and grow. And then that happened, and we just looked at each other and went, this is going to be huge. And Kathy Freeman went and met the girls, and she said, this is an opportunity for the Matildas to get into the blood of the Australian people like she did at the Sydney 2000 Olympics. And it happened because our country loves to get on the bandwagon of a team or an athlete that's doing really well. And it's a competition that's being played in our own country, especially, and it's on primetime TV where everyone can watch for free.
Absolutely.
So that all of those things kind of combined. The girls were doing really well. We had certain players that just captivated the nation, and everyone fell in love with the Matildas. And so moving forward, have we capitalised or I think there's a lot that we can be doing. There's a lot that we need to do to keep the momentum going. So I'm sure the other girls have a lot to say about this, but I would like to see, us just keep going, keep the Matildas in the minds and in the view of the young girls, because you can't be what you can't see.
Yeah.
And everyone knows who the Matildas are now, and we just need to keep rolling with that.
100%. And Janine, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be at the old Wembley Stadium when it was full in England, when England played, White Hart Lane, and a number of grounds around, been to some big football matches. Got to go to the World Cup final. And it probably took me till half time to actually pinch myself that this is where I was, watching a World Cup final in this country. Unfortunately, no Matildas, although my old English heart was beating a bit faster for the Lionesses, I will admit. What's your thoughts? Was the World Cup a success in your eyes of what we to put on the spectacle for a start? But moving forward, do you think we've still got some momentum to come out of it?
Oh, absolutely. We still have some momentum and growth to come out of it. And I think we've got to really look at that pathway through to our national competition and the league that we provide. And I think it was Ellie Carpenter came out a couple of weeks ago and said we really need to get serious about our A-League W competition. That a lot of the players that are playing in that competition themselves are still working part-time or full-time. And we're losing players to overseas, which I know when they get to the Matildas level, they need to go over there and play football to gain that experience and exposure to, better competitions. But our pathway for our junior Matildas to come through, and they need to be playing full-time football at that level. So for me, that's certainly an area that I think we need to focus on and, invest in and invest not just in the competition, but having, the wages topped up so these young girls coming through can stay home in Australia with their families and in playing in our local competition and bring others, from Europe and from, the UK and bring others over to our league. That's really what I think we need to have a strong focus on, build our own competition here in Australia. And make it elite like the UK and the US, or the US competition was and the UK competition is now. So for me, the momentum will continue with the Matildas, and we've still got a long way to go with that pay equity with the winners of the World Cup. I think it's a third or a quarter prize money between the men's and women's. A quarter, isn't it, Leigh? They mentioned that the other day.
Yeah, it's a quarter. I was reading something, Sava.
From that national level, from the World Cup level, great to be watching the spectacle that we watched, with Spain and England. I mean, that was just out of this planet around skill. And there was no difference.
Going back, sorry, McPhee, just going back. I've just been reading an article about it, and it's a quarter. It's a quarter of what the men get, but the payment to the clubs from where the players are, with the women, it was 1/10 of the total prize money. With the men, it's 50% of the total prize money. So the funding model for the women is not just the actual total amount. It's the money that comes back to the clubs where the players have come from is so out of whack. It's even more out of whack than the prize money. Bizarre. Anyway, sorry, McPhee. Just had to get that out.
I'm used to you butting in. Used to you having your say.
It could be my new nickname, Button.
Button.
Yeah, so
you heard it here first.
For me, Marty, the game's in a great place, but let's really invest in our local leagues. And also from a World Cup perspective from FIFA, let's top up that prize money so it's equal to the men's, because the spectacle is just as good, if not better, because it's based on skill.
Oh, it was just outstanding. The event itself, to take anything away, it was just outstanding. The way it was set up, put on, it was just brilliant. But
I think one of the biggest surprises was
Leigh's back.
The
Button.
The games where the Matildas were playing, that was the hottest ticket in town, wherever they were playing. So everyone was looking for one. But the games where the Matildas weren't playing, we filled the stadiums.
Yeah.
Like, I never in a million years thought that was going to happen.
Yep.
Because we're such a multicultural country, I think that's what
100%.
That was the ticket there.
Yeah.
We were, but talking to some people, they were like, we couldn't get tickets to the Matildas game, so we got tickets to another game.
Yeah.
Because then we can say we've been to a World Cup.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was the same in New Zealand as well.
Good.
Yeah.
They were filling them up as well. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I love the fact that even the last game we played last Wednesday night against Uzbekistan, it's a sellout within a day and a half here in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I went to the Socceroos, and no disrespect to the Socceroos, but it's for me, I'm very biased, and it's great to see our women override the support in the game. Yep. But the last game for the Socceroos, probably lucky to get 25,000 there.
They're the boy Matildas, Janine.
So, yeah, it's just so great, Marty, for us. And we're all so proud of where the Matildas are at and where the game's at in our country. And to see the support it's getting, to see, fathers and mothers arrive at that ground. It took us 25 minutes to get into the ground. I mean, that's a great problem to have. And you walk in there and no longer do you see young kids with their fathers or mothers in Socceroos shirts. They've got Matildas shirts with Kerr and Rasso and Ford on the back, Fowler. It's great to see these young kids really decked out in Matildas gear. And no longer do you see the Socceroos scarves at games. It's Matildas. So, it's a pretty proud moment for us old girls to walk into a stadium and see that and experience that.
100%. And what's your thoughts, Vicki, on, I mean, we just mentioned, I was going to say the Socceroos are, they're battling away doing their thing too, but they haven't captured the imagination of the nation, if you like, unless they end up being in some sort of final. But the Matildas, every single time they play, I don't think there was any doubt we were going to win the other day, but we backed out the joint. What is it about this team?
I think it's the relationship they have with the fans.
Yeah.
So the girls are more happy to, spend time at the end of the match. I know that the whole thing about it drives us a bit nuts, but, the whole thing about, signing stuff at the end and just the relationship that they have with them. A quick story. Last Wednesday at the match, I saw a girl with we were just waiting for actually Jill Foster to do a Fox interview, and there was a girl with a Claire Wheeler sign there, and we had a quick chat to her and her dad, and I said, look, can I take a photo of you, because a friend of mine who I play football with, her son actually goes out with Claire Wheeler. So I forwarded the photo on, took the photo, forwarded the photo on. She sent it. She said, oh, that's fantastic. I'll send it on to Claire. Now, Claire actually sought that girl out in that crowd at the end of that match and gave her a shirt. Just purely and simply on that. And that's pretty amazing. So that girl plays, SAP, in local Sydney competition. And that'll stick in her memory, and it'll stick in her father's memory and all the other. And I think that's what's really good with the girls is they resonate, not just with young kids, but with older people, grannies, the whole bit. Guys, how many times we see now guys with, Rasso and Kerr and, and hey, not to mention, Mackenzie Arnold shirt sold out in 3 minutes. That's a goalkeeper, that just, you just couldn't. It was the biggest sort out, jumper that you could get. So, it's fantastic. But it's the relationship the girls have with the fans, I think, is the biggest thing for me.
And Renaye, what's your thoughts on this magic, this feel around this national team? How do we get that back towards the women's competition? Because I think we've had some cracking games that our Mariners women have played. Watching other games, and we're getting 1,500, 2,000. To me, we've had some better quality games than what some of the men's and different places will have. There's been some great football. How do we transfer that magic into this local scene?
Further to what Janine said, how good would it be on the follow-up from the World Cup? Everybody loved the Matildas. Everybody loved Australia. It was the hottest ticket in town. People from all over the world came here. We've got a great climate. We've got great conditions to play the game. Everybody loves an Aussie. How good would it be to on the back of the Matildas and the euphoria of the World Cup? We've got the facilities. We've got all the amenities to great grounds to play really wonderful football.
Leigh, actually, I'll ask you. When you played that first game, when you went to Taiwan and it all was starting for you, did you even in your wildest dreams think we're going to have a World Cup in this country, this team's going to be loved by everybody? Did you even imagine it would be anything like what it is now?
I never thought it. I thought it would happen, but I just never thought it would happen in my lifetime.
Right.
I thought I'd be dead and gone by then. I thought I didn't think we'd still be struggling this far on, but it's I don't think I ever thought. I always thought it would happen. It's just I've kind of figured out lately. It's just about opportunity, and if the opportunity's there, and I knew that if it did come up in a whole bunch of areas, we'd grab it with both hands, which is what we had.
Yeah.
I just didn't think it would happen this quick. I mean, I can remember that the only that tournament in Taiwan wasn't exactly. I found out subsequent to that it actually wasn't the first Matildas game. The first official Matildas game was against New Zealand at Seymour Shore in '79. But I can remember being on the bus, and we had a big coach. Actually, we had a crappy army-looking bus going to that tournament. It was the next tournament in Taiwan that I went to. We had a fancy coach, but we had this bus in '78 that looked like it came straight out of MASH.
Yeah.
We were staying in a US Army base, and we were eating out of the compartmentalized. I don't know whether that's the right word. Metal trays that they have on, in Army mess halls. But I can remember going to that game, and we got told, there's going to be, you have to march around, and there's going to be thousands of people there, and the flag will be out, and they'll play the national anthems, and you have to sing the national anthem, and everyone's gone, sing the national anthem. What? We don't know the national anthem, because it was the year it went from God Save the Queen to Advanced Australia Fair. Wow. And one of the girls in the team was a school teacher. She'd had to learn it. So we're all learning the national anthem on the way to the stadium to play the first game, and we're learning the national anthem. So it wasn't much time to think about anything else. But like I said, I didn't think we'd be anywhere near what we are as quick as what we are. I thought it wouldn't be in my lifetime.
100%.
I think what surprised me, Marty, and sorry to butt in because I have to butt in on Leigh now. But whilst I thought we all were,
I can feel my shorts being pulled. Hang on.
Good, grab your shorts, your top, mate. Whilst I think we all thought definitely the crowds would be up there and we could fill stadiums. I remember when we went to China for the 1988 pilot, as Leigh mentioned before, first FIFA World Cup. It was a pilot World Cup. I think there were only 16 teams in it. When China were playing, or when we played the Americans, there was over 40,000 in that stadium.
Yeah.
I remember John Doyle got sent off. Our coach at the time, he got sent off the bench. He was a bit of a hothead, Captain Socceroo. And he got sent off, and he got sent over to the other side of the pitch. And he was the only blonde-haired person over the other side of the pitch you could see out of 20,000 people. So, yeah, they certainly filled stadiums back there. So I had no hesitation that we could do that in our time. Yeah. But what really surprised me is you're getting over 11.5 million viewers watching the Matildas play a game of football. So whilst we would capture the football community, I never thought we would capture the whole of Australia on TV the way we did. It was just incredible. And to hear that and to see everyone jump on board, that's just the start of something that can be, unbelievable for us.
100%. Couldn't agree more.